Yo, what's going on everyone? Back with another Elliott Wave analysis for Bitcoin. In this video, we're going to be talking about the shorter time frame and medium time frame analysis and see what our next expectation is going to be. It's going to be a little bit difficult here, so bear with me. Now, since our last analysis, we were expecting some kind of anticipated pullback based on this diagonal idea if it was complete, or if we were in some kind of shallow correction, meaning that the correction wasn't as deep, we could have alternatively been in a shorter time frame, minor degree wave 1-2 pullback that is still part of a major bullish move to the upside where we're working in an extended wave 3, where the primary goal is to work with the hierarchy of degrees and have the pullbacks as shallow as possible. So we've ultimately achieved the initial move, but is this move going to be the next primary idea where we flip-flop back and forth between the diagonal idea and this impulsive idea? We're going to be discussing that. So it ultimately resorted down to whether the pullback was going to be longer, as we have here for the diagonal, or shorter to manage our next expectation to the upside. But either way, both expectations, either the diagonal or this impulse idea, was to the upside. Right now, we are still unfortunately trying to figure that out as we are still distributing. We did manage the first move or the first initial move to the downside, but it was met with another move to the upside, followed by another downside, and now again, another move to the upside. But what's interesting is, are we seeing this as an impulse move to the downside or a corrective three-way move to the downside? Because the moves following that, we could pretty much say that the next moves were corrective. So we maybe have to work with still a corrective move where we may be working for more downside and we're just distributing like I have said. So this means that we are in a bit of a dilemma at the time of recording as we are still distributing after our assumed top of this primary diagonal idea. I'm going to do my best to organize these scenarios because we possibly may need to make small adjustments throughout the next few days to our overall expectation as price has now developed and created a small range on the shorter or micro time frame ideas. So now the very first thing we need to do is organize everything from a top-down analysis from where we currently stand from the price section perspective, and then lastly create a goal. So what I did here was create a family tree that helps us organize these ideas as best as we can. Now, the family tree here I created is basically how we should be organizing our scenarios, like I said, but everything else in between is going to be how we're going to be achieving that goal. The end goal here is indicated by the green text. So these are our scenarios, and then our overall goal is here, and just based on the family tree idea, we have to kind of go back and forth in terms of where we are in terms of the expectation. And then lastly, do we have the right look more or less for any of these scenarios? And that is going to be the highest probable outcome. Now, like I've said, starting from the top-down analysis from our previous video expectation, like I have mentioned, from this possible diagonal being complete or this impulse of the shorter time frame being very shallow, is what we have expected, but we had that small weight towards the lower levels of a more deeper correction. So from our previous video, we had the expectation of, are we expecting lower levels? Yes, we did. What was the idea? It was a diagonal idea. And then have we achieved that depth since that last video? If yes, we could have been more confident that this move is going to be more correcting deeper as we are still creating this move from the previous week, but we didn't do that as of current time of recording. So if that's a no, we have to go back and then now kind of go back in between another set of ideas. Are we going to be expecting higher levels? Meaning that are we going to be expecting higher levels in an earlier fashion than a deeper pullback where we're going to be expecting a deeper 1-2 from that diagonal idea? So if that's a no, then what two ideas are we going back to? It's going to be the impulse idea, like I've said here, or we're moving correctively to the upside as an ending diagonal that still achieves higher levels as the goal, but is it going to be creating three waves, or is this going to be achieved as a shallow pullback on the minor degree? Have we achieved a minor degree of a pullback as a shallow pullback? So far, we have, but we could still ultimately go down to the 382 or the 0.5 or the 61.8% respectively. We haven't done that just yet. However, these two ideas, since this was no, we have to kind of go back and start to think about what ideas could be the higher weighted probability, and then we can achieve whether this is going to be the right look more or less. So going back, starting with this diagonal idea, the only way I could possibly see this is a few ways. Now we have, as you can see here in my diagram here, we have a lot of ideas in my object tree. We have three different types of diagonal variations in terms of how we can achieve that depth. So the main thing here that I'm going to put as the goal, we need to achieve depth. Sorry, we need to achieve depth here. That's the overall goal. So what we need to be doing here is that if we're going to be achieving depth, that is going to be the primary idea. So that brings us to, if we are able to achieve that depth, we can still continue with this idea. But right now, we still have to flip-flop back and forth. That's why this no is giving us two different outcomes in terms of the alternative idea. So with that being said, the only way I can see this being achieved going forward is a possible WXY. Now, that's quite early to call for a very complex correction, meaning that we need two consecutive zigzags, meaning that wave W has to be achieved as a simple zigzag, and the wave Y has to be achieved as a zigzag as well. And more or less, we're looking for equality, and we don't even know what this corrective move for wave X is right now at this current time recording. And in that case, we haven't even reached the 23.6% of the Fibonacci retracement. As you can see, we've only reached barely the 23.6%, and that's giving us a little bit of worrisome in terms of how far are we going to be expecting this depth of correction after this diagonal is completed. Because with even a small minor correction, let's say this ABC has corrected down to here, and we did achieve at least a 23.6 or even 38.2%. We have a problem here. The wave 1, 2 is quite small in terms of the overall size of this diagonal, meaning that we really want to be trying to create a different new distribution zone against this larger diagonal to create a larger 1-2 pullback. That is why if we have just a 1-2 pullback, this idea has to be transforming into the impulse idea, where we have to be starting to create a nested structure, and we're working in shallow corrective moves, even if the ideas are hybrid in nature. So this diagonal variation number 1, where we have this, we have a possible, again, 3-wave move corrections being created here. And if that's the case, then I would say this B wave could be created as a possible triangle where we create a wave C. And if we do assume that another wave X is being created, then we have to assume that this is going to be another wave Y to the downside to achieve that depth. Like I've said, that's the main goal, ladies and gentlemen. Going back to that family tree, have we achieved that depth? That's the most important thing here. So we haven't done that whatsoever just yet. So this diagonal idea starts to reduce in probability by quite a bit since we're still in the early stages. We could have created a larger 5-way move to the downside, at least retesting the major trend line over here to give us that first level of actionary wave of a wave A, B to the C to the downside, but we didn't get that. We're still correcting and we're still around this level of this trend line here. But that's what it is. We have to kind of continue back and forth, and this is the only way I can see it currently being played out. This would create a pretty nice parallel channel for this waves W and X and Y. So that's the first diagonal variation idea. Now, the second diagonal variation idea is a possible flat for a 1, 2 if this diagonal is complete. Now, there's a big problem with this one as well, ladies and gentlemen, because we have to not only assume that this B wave is going to be correcting to the upside, where we go into the B pocket fib zone, meaning that this B pocket expanded zone is going to be anywhere in between the 123.6 and the 138.2%, where this B wave is the actual minimum target, at least for a B wave for a B pocket expanded zone. So if we're seeing this as a 3-wave corrective move to the downside for a wave A flat, we're expecting this to be some kind of corrective move for a wave B, could be any corrective move, and then we're working for a C wave to the downside. So we're expecting not only higher levels, then get rejected at the exact pinpointed zone, and then based on whether the 123.6 or the 138.2% is going to be a rejection zone, we're going to have to expect a wave C that's going to be quite deep to achieve at least some level of depth to retrace part of this diagonal, which doesn't even go all the way down to the major zone over here. Why? Because a wave C of an expanded flat usually will retrace at a minimum, or I would say most commonly, to the 161.8%. But there's a problem in itself. That doesn't look like a wave 1, 2 after such a large caliber of a wave 1 of a diagonal being completed as a diagonal, rather. We would have to expect that the 261.8% is going to be played out, and that's a pretty rare target as is. Not so much for Bitcoin, but for overall expectation, This C wave has to come down over here just to come down to meet the normal Fibonacci retracements, but us as well hitting that really extended wave C target for an expand flow of 261.8% to meet at least the small expectation of a right look of a wave 1-2. And in that case, we might already be in a different kind of scenario. So this is another idea. It's not out of the idea in terms of what the theoretical approaches can be giving us. It's just technically and from our overall expectation, this just seems to be lower on the spectrum. So with that being said, we have another way of achieving that depth for that ABC to the downside, or WXY. In this case, it does achieve a little bit of a better look as a possible diagonal because we do have the internal counts being resolved, meaning that this first wave 1 of the diagonal has been achieved as a 3-way move. We have another WXY into wave 2. This leading diagonal going to wave A, 3-way move up for wave B as a WXY, wave X as a triangle. I did all the countings already. And then this ABC to the upside is B wave. Now we are at the maximum pivotal zone that we need to be going down now to at least break this previous regional low here, then create another move to the upside for 4, 5, and these have to also be respected as 3-wave moves. So with that being said, that would complete us around the wave A, and that could also be in confluence with this immediate trend line here, where we could get a bounce here for a B wave, come back up and see what kind of major Fibonacci level is going to be rejected from this point to this point, and we should be expecting around the 38.2 to the 61.8% for this B wave, and then ultimately create a partner like for this, and that C wave could be giving us a little bit of leeway room to give us more depth that we are trying to achieve for this diagonal idea. So that is possibly the best outcome or the best look for this overall scenario in terms of how this could be playing, but it is very early to call for this diagonal, and I don't want to be calling diagonals on the micro time frame too much because it is starting to get a lot messier around here, so we have to kind of manage our expectations as best as we can, no matter how much of a good look that we are trying to achieve. So this is also another idea, ladies and gentlemen, this A, B, C to the downside as a diagonal for wave A. Now, the other idea, again, is now going to be the impulse idea. Now, this idea, now the micro time frames is going to be giving us a lot of different hybrid outlooks, just like we had for the diagonal idea. This idea is where we have a wave ABC going into wave W, a WXY going into wave X, and then this ABC is now in play, and then that should be giving us more or less the same equality or length for this partner leg wave W that we're trying to achieve for this wave Y. That gives us not only support at this level of this immediate trend line, but also this immediate support zone of Fibonacci levels that is achieved from this pivot to this pivot over here. We've achieved a lot of the minimum expectations of the Fibonacci, so technically we can just go up from now if the wave 2 is already in, because we do have a technical 3-way move here. But really we want to still be achieving this to as best as we can for a possible minor degree wave 1-2 in primary here, because I ran out of degrees, so this is technically a minor degree. That's how I like to organize my ideas. But again, at least the 61.8% and the 50%, 38.2% have at least the 38.2% has been achieved. We're still trying to achieve a little bit of a lower level since it is still working correctively and not impulsively to the upside. This move off the lows, it could have been achieved as a 5-way move, but it is more deemed as a 3-way move, because if we zoom in, you can see this move here, an ABC going into wave W, and then we had a triangle here, X, 3-way move here for a wave B. So that's why I'm still seeing this as a 3-way move that's now being completed. That's why we have to work with the corrections as best as we can. And right now, in my opinion, I think we're going to be achieving this as a WXY to the downside at least one more time. Now, I could be completely wrong, but again, we are being met with the micro time frame resistance of the maximum level of that 78.6 and the 88.6% level for this B wave that's achieved from this pivot to this pivot. So if this is going to be achieved, we're going to be looking for the C wave move to the downside. Now, if this wave is complete. Now, again, this could be in hybrid action, just like I have said. This could be working in what could be that triangle idea as well, which is going to be having that wave X here where we distribute a little bit longer, and we could still achieve that same relative idea where we come back down and still break this low here and still achieve that level of support around the 0.5 and the 61.8% before we move to the upside, completing the higher degree wave 3s, 4s, and 5s. So that's how I see it, ladies and gentlemen. That is the overall expectation for the impulse idea. And now lastly, The very low probability, although it is possible, is the possible ending expanding diagonal. But right now, I don't want to be talking about that right now, as we don't have even this subwave 3. We have to also be expecting depth correction for this wave 4 and a longer wave 5. Until we get corrective moves being achieved, we don't have that. So going back to that family tree, right now, we are expecting this impulse idea to have a little bit more weight at the current time of recording against this diagonal idea. And then we are going to be achieving a possible shallow pullback of the minor degree. And if that's the case, we are pretty much expecting to have the right look more or less. And then we should be expecting higher levels as the ultimate goal. And that's how I'm seeing it overall, seeing it to the move to the upside. So hopefully that was helpful, ladies and gentlemen. This was a little bit of an in-depth analysis in terms of how we can manage our expectations. Remember, just to kind of quickly summarize it, use that family tree, go back and rewatch this video as best as you can. This diagonal variation idea has to be achieved, in my opinion, as a WXY with a possible parallel channel being created here. And if that's the case, then this idea here has to be created in pretty much in perfect tandem with each other. We have to have an ABC here, and we have to have another relative ABC. But we will get a little bit of a better, clearer picture coming in this week as well. So I'll be making sure to update that as well, not only here, but on Patreon as well. And then on diagonal variation, this ABC flat where we create another high and then have a deep wave C, you can see that's already a problem in itself, as I've explained. Diagonal 3, this has the best look because we are achieving still an ABC depth correction, but we have to assume this to be a diagonal for this first actionary wave being created. So again, we still don't know. This could be starting more, it could also turn into a primary idea depending on if we still correct as 3-wave moves for the rest of the waves 3, 4, and 5. And then again, the impulse idea, this just seems to have the better fitted idea because it does fit into the hybrid action of this wave X being complete or this wave X as a triangle before we achieve one more move to the downside that leads us to that 0.5 or the 61.8% level. Hopefully that's helpful. I will see you guys in the next video. Make sure to thumbs up, like the video, subscribe if you haven't already. It does help the channel. If you guys love these Bitcoin videos, I'll try to pump out more Bitcoin videos if you guys are interested in it. Please do make sure to like the video. Thank you very much. See you guys in the next video. Have a fantastic rest of the week and have a fantastic Monday. Bye-bye.